Well, hello. How are you, Lori?
Hi, Olivia. It's nice to see you and meet you more officially.
Yes, nice to meet you as well. Just so everyone who's going to be watching this has an idea, I'm here with Lorrie King, who is the founder of Caire Beauty. And I'm really excited to learn a little bit about your story and how, you got to have this wonderful brand. Why don't we just start out with you telling us a little bit about, the founder story? I know you have a co-founder, if I'm
Yes.
correct? And between the two of you have like a combined experience of like 40 plus years in the beauty industry. Um, I imagine you guys really knew exactly what was out there and what was missing. So tell me a little bit about how you came to find Caire Beauty, and how you decided to start the brand.
Celeste and I really were always these types of people who are curious about different products, especially once, and I met her through a mutual friend. So this is a long time that we've sort of been collaborating in terms of ideation and what else does the world need? Let's put it that way. And one of the things that we noticed is in our 40s in particular, men and women were asking us about the circles under their eyes, eye bags, dark circles. And those were the key things that people were motivated on, like how do we take care of this? And at that time, I had done my MBA and I was working in finance, but I had also started working at the Bloomingdale's counter in New Jersey at the Short Hills Mall, and I was learning about Yves Saint Laurent, and they have this Touche Eclat concealer, and that was all we would do. We would cover up our dark circles. We would cover up our skin, and when Celeste and I started encountering this sort of period of life where we realized that something else must be happening, we decided to come together and develop Caire Beauty, Care with an I. So it's Caire for the individual woman in you and everyone who's someone who's innovative, inspiring, and all of the I's. So we wanted to create a positive brand and one that has solutions that are science backed that really help to support what the skin does during this time. The insight, Olivia, is really that in talking with our science partners, they're part of our company, we discovered that hormone decline, which is not something you ever think about, right? You only think about your hormones increasing when you're a teenager. And then you don't realize that in your 30s, they're actually starting to go down at, starting at the age of 31, which is kind of frightening, right? When you think about it, because nobody's told you this.
Terrifying, yes.
It's not that's happening in your body, but it's a natural process. But you're not even halfway through your life yet. This is something that's starting, right? So, you still, and that's why a lot of, people have hormonal effects still in their 30s in terms of acne, back knee, and all of these things, because there's still sort of disruption. And what ends up happening is you start noticing, or your friends start asking you, I look so tired. I have these bags under my eyes. And that's where, that mid to late 30s, you start to notice it on your skin or other people's skin, where you might have slight bags, you might have fine lines and wrinkles. And we said to ourselves, isn't there some way to create a pathway to the skin from a scientific standpoint that would allow our skin to have more longevity to it and be healthier and hence look more youthful? So that was really our objective. And as you could see, when we first got on here, I was barely ready. I told you I don't have any makeup on. So I put on some lipstick and that's all. I have my serum on and that's all.
That's
And I
insane.
that's
Your
it.
skin
There's
looks
no
perfect.
there's there's no filters, right? And I'm 62 as of last month. So there you go.
Congratulations. Wow. I want
Yeah.
I want your skin when I'm 62. I'm gonna have to start using your products.
You have to start young, taking care of your skin. And it's not just about the products, it's about how you actually take care of it. And we can talk about that in a little bit.
That's amazing. Such an interesting story. And tell me a little bit about how the whole process was getting to the point where you actually had a product, right? I mean, because it's a very scientific process, I imagine, to be able to get to that premise that hormone loss is sort of something that is causing these skin issues. And I imagine you had to, test the product and build all the ingredients and go to a lab, etc. Like, what was the whole process like? And
Well, I have been, as you mentioned, I've been doing this for over 25 years. And when I say doing this, I mean building brands, beauty brands that have launched into the market, have been super successful. So I've worked with people like Halle Berry, Celine Dion, Elizabeth Taylor, at the time, Karl Lagerfeld, when he was on the House of Chloe fragrances, and created fragrances for all of these people. And a fragrance cycle, as you'll usually see, 2 fragrances a year. So it's about, you hone the sort of launch cycle. But where I've truly got amazing experience down to the sort of chemistry pathway was when I worked with John Frieda in haircare. And John is very disciplined and at the time they were very disciplined in how they approach formulation development. And they had their own chemists and they had their own lab. And I was able to, create in this play box and successfully launched an amazing product at the time that was truly groundbreaking. And it was because of those insights of how you build a product from the top, from the bottom up. Because it wasn't just about the ingredients. It was also about creating a story that was compelling, creating a science that actually worked, that was problem solution oriented, and then being able to communicate what that story was. And John and that whole team, they were masters at it. So even though I was only there for a short time, I really got a feeling for that in a unique way. Whereas when I worked with like Boots and some of the other companies, I was launching something like for Boots number 7, etc., something that was already created in the UK. And then you're executing it on the ground here in the US. So it was a very different experience. So in order to build this company, we already had our science partners who had a lab. So their lab was able to help us, create our product in a unique way within this sort of care lab that is very unique, because that means that we were able to, we own our science in terms of how we've developed it. Most people don't create their own science. They go to what's called a contract manufacturer and they say, hey, I want this color lipstick. I want it to feel like this or that. And there are base formulas that are already available to you, and you buy the formula off the shelf and you can tweak it by adding things to it. That's not what we did. We started from the very bottom of what the actual ingredients were. We then used unique pathways and proprietary pathways to change how the ingredients work, to really focus on hyperabsorbability. And hyperabsorbability means that your skin is able to absorb products. It's kind of like your gut. When your gut isn't set in such a way where you can absorb the actual vitamins and nutrients that are in the food, or if it hasn't been prepared, like there is something, for example, with how you prepare broccoli. You're supposed to cut it beforehand and let it sit for a few minutes in order for you to be able to absorb the nutrients. And you're not supposed to cook it to the extent that you do. And then if you cook it with olive oil, it works better in your gut. If you boil it, you lose a lot of what that is. So you have to understand the process of how your body is able to take things in. And skincare is no different than how your body can take in nutrients. It's just that no one talks about it that way.
That's incredible. A lot of good fun facts there that I did not know. So I'm going to be keeping them with me.
That came from a woman who's Italian who was on a Mel Robbins podcast that I was listening to recently.
That's awesome.
And I was like, what? What do you mean?
I've been eating broccoli wrong all these years.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And it's the olive oil. Like even with tomatoes, she talks about tomatoes and how your body is, able to take in the nutrients of the tomato. I mean, it's fascinating. So when you think about that, that's fascinating to me because I think about that from a skin standpoint. Our skin is our largest organ, right? When it comes to your gut health, that's the thing that keeps you alive
A
as
hundred
well.
percent, a
They're
hundred
both
percent.
so parallel, right?
Yeah, like it's really, I think, important to come at these products from a very scientific background, right? You have such a profound knowledge since you guys are, creating it in this lab. It's as though you have your own lab with your scientific
Yep.
partners, no? So
Yeah.
that's super important. And coming from this, very scientific background, making these products, what would you say if we had to give a woman who was going to use Care Beauty, what would be like the ideal skincare routine for them?
So one of the things that is, it's perfectly great if you want to use, 20 products on your skin in a day. That's a lot of products. And if you think about it, a lot of women are using one layer after the other, one layer after the other. They don't, you double cleanse or triple cleanse. And, there's certain times you should be double cleansing, but triple cleansing, but it's not every day unless you're heavy makeup wearer, right? And then, you may or may not use a toner or acne solution, right? There's more layers. And then you go and you put on your, a serum such as ours, but then you might want to put a vitamin C serum on top of that or an ACE ferulic, which is for antioxidant damage. And then you're going to put on a moisturizer. And then on top of that, you have to put on an SPF, right? And then a foundation and on and on and on. Mascara, eyeshadow, blush, etc. So, and then you're layering on all your hair products on top of that and your nail products. So when you think about the beauty regimen, it's actually quite complex. Care is about how do you have healthier skin? How do we want our products play nicely with other products, but you only need so much. So for example, all of our beauty products have water in them, even ours, right? But it's all about how you formulate so that the concentration is the highest. Well, the more water you add, the less expensive the formula is, right? When you think about it. So, and I mean, I'm not saying that from the standpoint of um, what the industry does. I don't know I've worked the industry my entire life, so I understand how they buy ingredients, etc. Our approach really is to find superior ingredients that function well together, such as and also understanding how it's going to work best. So, getting 3 types of hyaluronic acid, not just one or two. What does that mean? Well, hyaluronic acid is the building block of your body. It is what holds your skin together, your brain, you know, from your head to your toes. It's in your body. But yet you don't really know what it is. And it's not an acid, it's actually an amino acid, which is like a building block, right? So what's happening is as you age, you're losing your ability to produce the hyaluronic acid. Well, if our formula has a large molecule which sits on top of the skin, I call it like a moisture elevator, right? Like you have the big molecule that sits on top, and that's like the top floor. And then as you come down, you have the middle molecule, which now a lot of products don't have. That's not what you're finding in Trader Joe's for $6. You're getting the big molecule that just makes you temporarily glow. It dissipates and then you're dry again. Then you have the middle molecule. Then you have the tiniest molecule available in the world. Well, that's the most expensive. But we have that broad spectrum in our hyaluronic acid. And so what happens is people will ask, well, how much hyaluronic acid do you have in it? That's not what it's about. It's actually about how effective the hyaluronic acid is going to be on your skin. So a lot of people try to put too much hyaluronic acid. They have a hyaluronic acid cleanser, and then they have a hyaluronic acid toner, and then they put on hyaluronic acid. Well, when you put on a hyaluronic acid like ours, which has a much higher potency level, it's going to it will be too much for your skin if everything has hyaluronic acid. So if you go and put a foundation on that has hyaluronic acid, then you might start to pill because your skin only has the ability to absorb so much, right? But most people will never experience that because there are no products that they've ever tried that would do that because of the way the hyaluronic acid is not the best level for your skin, or the tiniest level for your skin. So those are some of the things that we do from a science standpoint that are unique that most people haven't even heard of. And it's really about how you combine all of that to be very, very effective. And there's much more science in our our formulas, but I like to say, because we're on QVC now, that we're like our product is like a personal trainer for your skin. If your personal trainer goes on vacation, what happens to you? You probably are not working out as much, and then he or she gets back in a couple of weeks, and you're like, oh, you know, you blame it on maybe, eating too much cake or drinking too much, but actually you weren't working out. Our product is the same. When people forget to take our product with them on vacation, they notice a change in their skin that's not good because they didn't realize that their skin was actually functioning better, as though it's like you're getting a personal trainer for your skin. So those are the types of compliments we get that are unique to our product that you don't hear. So what it is about getting the message out. How do we tell more people about what we're doing that truly helps you understand why your products stop working when you turn 35, 40? Because they do. They really do.
It's amazing. I mean, I think a lot of good advice in there for people who are looking to use skincare in their 30s, 40s, and so on. And you guys come at it from such a scientific standpoint that I imagine education and educating, like you said, getting that information out there is a really important part of your strategy or marketing strategy or email strategy, so that people can actually understand what they need and what the correct products are for them, and etc. So maybe if we switch gears a little bit, I guess two things. One, before you came from places like Boots and things that are a little bit more retail based, I imagine now with Caire Beauty, you guys are a little bit more focused on direct to consumer. And that might have been an interesting change for you, right? Trying to figure out how all of that works and getting maybe more heavily into things like online sales and subscription. What are sort of like the main channels you guys are working with nowadays for sales? Like, do you do any retail? Is it mostly direct to consumer? Is it all direct to consumer? And then, that education piece, how are you getting that information out there at the moment, right? Are we talking email marketing campaigns, SMS campaigns? What are you guys doing? A lot of social media, user generated reviews. What's working for you guys?
So, fortunately, I was involved in a startup prior to this that allowed me to bridge the gap from working at a big corporation like Coty to then working in a lean sort of online direct-to-consumer focused business. So during that 5 years, I honed sort of my understanding of, bridging the gap of building a website for Halle Berry fragrances that looked absolutely stunning, but didn't sell. Because back then, retailers didn't build websites to sell. They built websites to look beautiful and represent the brand, almost like an advertisement where someone could come to and learn more, right? And you could be on Facebook and so you'd have a visual sort of imagery and point of view. Well, when it came to building this startup, which was really something that was about our own investment and raising the capital to get started. And we were fortunate that we were able to do some of that back then. That is very, very even more challenging today for companies or brands that are specifically run by women and women of color. It continues to be very challenging. So one of the things that I've always viewed in terms of starting a company is that it's like a puzzle, like one of those 2,000 piece puzzles. And because I've launched so many brands over and over and over, that's a part of the puzzle. And you layer on the direct to consumer piece, and you begin to understand the pieces of the puzzle that help to make the ecosystem of digital work more effectively together. So important components of that are, first you have your Shopify store, or whatever your base sort of platform to sell is going to be. And that's a minimum threshold. If you're going to sell direct to consumer, Shopify is the leader in the world, and they really do an effective job of bringing the apps to the App Store, similar to how Apple iPhone brings the apps to the App Store. It's the same concept, right? So we have these choices, and as founders, we have to make choices based on the sort of what's the minimum technology we need to have in terms of functionality, and what's the cost that takes. And what I believe, when it comes to direct to consumer, it's become much more expensive for brands like us to survive because the cost of all of these apps actually stacks up to be quite a lot of money, which becomes sort of your retailer storefront if you had a retailer storefront. But a lot of people want to take a piece of the pie, and that's where it becomes very, very challenging because there's only so many pieces to the pie. So in order to be successful, you have to know how to build the leanest tech stack, and you have to have some basics. If you're in beauty in particular, you have to have email, you have to have SMS, you have to have subscription, you have to be able to plug into Amazon and build on your strengths with Amazon. You have to have sort of the ability to be a fast website, so speed. You have to have a certain visual appeal. So whether those are videos from UGC or reviews from your customers, you have to have a way of capturing all of that. So the complexity of your tech stack can be like 20 different apps that plug in to make you have a better life, right? And it's the same with your iPhone. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want another app, because it's just too many. Because on an iPhone, you probably have 200 apps, let's say. Because you're like, yeah, I want to be able to Shazam something on a notice, or I want to listen to Pandora, but yet I might want to listen to Spotify, or I want to listen to Apple Music, or I want to read a book, and I'm gonna have, I'm gonna have my Audible app, my Kindle app. I mean, think about it, right? So it's the same sort of thing. So in order to be successful, you have to move all these levers, and then it was so much more inefficient to move those levers together in the past than it is today. So one of the one of the most important parts of our business is retention. And so how do you retain those customers? And the most important piece of that is building loyalty and trust. So when they can either come back and purchase once at a time, or they can purchase a subscription to make their lives easier. Some people hate subscriptions. Some people love subscriptions. Just like some people, never read their emails, but now people read their texts. And maybe they don't read their texts because now the iPhone sorts them out and says, these are people I know, these are people I don't know. So who knows what the right sort of levers are, because just like AI, all of these apps and the phones that basically accept all of the consumer interfaces change almost monthly, I would say. So we are currently, as I mentioned, on a direct-to-consumer frame, Amazon. We also sell to a lot of marketplaces, such as Nordstrom.com and others. We'll have another big announcement coming soon. But these online platforms are important because customers are shopping in so many different places. And if you're an aligned brand with what they're buying, then they're going to buy you. So we're on davidsbridal.com because that's usually a woman who is older, or maybe she's a divorcee and she's on her second or third marriage, or there's a mother of the bride, and there's an aunt of the bride, and there's grandmother of the bride. So women today are getting married. Some are still getting married younger, but they're getting married older and older. So skincare like ours is going to give you sort of that glow that you may only be able to get when you go to an esthetician, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
on all those platforms, we have limited brick and mortar retail. But what you have to do to be successful in this space is grow, get the attention of these places that are around, in different parts of the country, to get into their stores. There have to be people who believe in you
Yeah,
and what you're
yeah.
doing.
I imagine you have a lot of people who believe in in your products after having used them quite a few times, right?
Yes, yes, and that's what I mean by building retention. We have
Absolutely.
we have over 70% retention year on year. That is incredible. So we have to build more people who are learning about who we are, and we will do that. It just takes a lot of time, and it takes financial resources. And as I said, financial resources are quite lean for who I am and for what has happened in this business, from last year's tariffs to this year's escalating costs of from oil prices, given shipping and all of these things that are absolutely affecting how much money you can make. So it's become leaner and leaner and leaner and much more difficult. And one of the things that we've done is we're really fighting to save our prices, because we've priced everything below $100, so that women, especially as they get into, they're in the prime of their careers in their 40s, but once you have the onset of menopause, which is technically in the US at the age of 51, obviously you can be younger or older for this to happen, women's incomes actually decline in the US. So you're in a situation where women no longer they may love that three or four or $500 cream, but that's not going to necessarily fit in their budgets if the prices are going down, and if the products aren't working that are sitting in the drugstore aisle, or in some of the department stores, then what are you going to do? Or Sephora, or Ulta. You start to find brands like ours, and it's all about women word of mouth. So loyalty becomes really important.
I really admire that because, I think a lot of companies, they see an opportunity to raise prices and they go for it without, thinking twice. So I think it's something that also helps in terms of retention, because I think when people see that you're, you know, not trying to increase the prices as quickly as possible because all of a sudden some war broke out or whatever, which can easily affect the bottom line and probably does make your margins tighter. But it's something that I think people appreciate, no? Okay, so
Okay,
maybe we can
so
get a little bit more into the fact that you're talking about how difficult direct to consumer is these days, no? And being a smaller company, and there's a lot of challenges, you said tariffs and all sorts of things that are going on right now. What are some of the things that you're doing now and that you want to do in the future to sort of maintain that subscription and that retention and grow that part of the business, since it is such a big part of your business in these difficult times that we are facing?
Well, one of the things that I admire from some other brands that I've seen is the ability to really step up someone into a subscription. And I think it's more important that the people who buy from you the first time get their welcome discount, but that doesn't mean they necessarily subscribe. What we found is our customer comes back the second time and subscribes. So those first customers who come in to subscribe are actually costing us more money in a time when it's costing us more money. So if that person isn't necessarily going to be as loyal, then how do we change the funnel for them so that they step into the subscription So you welcome them, you give them a low regular 10% off that everybody else gets, and then you step them into a higher discount, let's say, on the next purchase. And then instead of giving the gift on the first purchase, give them a gift later to get them to that third purchase or fourth purchase. And one of the challenges that we've always had is there's not a lot of flexibility for um, adding in a giftable item one time. And that's been since my prior startup. Yet there's all sorts of gifting apps, but usually you get to choose a gift like at Sephora. You can choose 3, I think, before you check out. But there's not really something where it's like, I just want to be able to give a gift every 3 months, or after, maybe when someone hits 1 year, they get a birthday something, but it's not just an email drip. So subscriptions and loyalty, we have different things. You have regular subscriptions where we can make it more attractive for someone to subscribe by having enticements that are further out. They know they're working towards. And then there's the combination of loyalty. So the question becomes how valuable the subscriber is the most valuable. So how do you have the right level of rewards for them? And then you have people who don't want to deal with subscriptions, who just want loyalty. They want to get rewards. They want to have wins. Well, how do we make that more compelling? And who's doing that well? And my whole thing is I almost never benchmark beauty brands. I benchmark brands like Chewy or, Oatly milk, or, I benchmark fun, interesting brands, K18, who compel the consumer to want to come back for what they're providing in a different way. And I think that we still have work to do on how we build in more loyalty for our customers in beauty. And I want to always be the person who's first anyway.
I love it. That's
I
great. I really like your perspective on looking at brands that aren't within your sector. Really, I mean, you're looking outside in other verticals, which
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
really important, not to close yourself in as well.
That's right. It's like Bombas socks, right? All of these places. You have to look at places that are doing good, because that's what we're doing. We're here for women. We're here to support women, right? Embrace women, uplift women. So there's a doing good part, and then there is a we need to still stay alive and make a profit. But how do we get people to remember us when we're not sitting on the store shelf when they absolutely need that product? Everyone wants you to be everywhere. Excuse me, everywhere. But they don't realize that to sit on that shelf and to be a part of that environment in a lot of these stores can cost $25,000, $50,000 just to be there. And that's per quarter or half a year. That's a lot of business that you have to do, you
So
know?
I think on that point, if you had to give just maybe my mic's a little weird. If you had to give just one piece of advice to women who are trying to start maybe like a direct to consumer e-commerce brand, do something like do what you did, whether it's in the beauty industry or not, what what kind of advice would you give them, right? What's the one thing you wish someone would have told you before you started launching Caire Beauty?
It's an interesting question, but the world has changed. So the today you can ask ChatGPT or Claude how to do this. Okay, map it out for you. They've learned from people like me. They're learning from other people around the world now, and it's going to be easier and easier and easier to set up a store and sell. During the COVID situation, you had a lot of people who were launching new businesses because they had to launch on Shopify in order to reach customers because they couldn't go to the stores as much. So consumers got they they learned how to shop online. Some people had never shopped online. So that gives us an advantage, right? Because now our segment of the market, the 35-40 plus woman, she knows that she can rely on buying online and be secure. So there was a lot of barriers. Today, you can go on and say, I want to start a beauty brand. And how do I do that? Online. And they're going to tell you Shopify, and here are the different apps, and these are the ones. And if you use Perplexity, you can break down by which apps you should buy by category. So what's changed today is that brands or apps like you all need to make sure that not only are we doing search engine optimization for Google or SEO, that we're doing AEO and GEO for ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Grok, etc., so that our names get selected when they're trying to explain to people what, if you're setting up a store, which apps to use. If you're setting up a brand, if you're not setting up a brand, if you're selling a brand, which brands to buy and how it compares, right? So launching a store today and how you do it is totally different. But a lot of people believe they have a creative idea, they build it, they can launch it, but they don't necessarily realize that the marketing end of it is just as compelling and getting press. So we have an Oprah Daily award for our moisturizer, right? Which is an amazing accomplishment. But that is extremely difficult to do. Extremely difficult. It means more and more, but there are fewer stamps of approval like that. And most of the stamps of approval you have to buy. So if you want a good housekeeping seal of approval, you actually have to pay something for it to submit your application and for them to do the work, because it costs them money to screen the products and to see how they perform. But once you get to a certain level, you can go and you can afford to do that. So doing your homework is the most important. So you can talk to your friends, but you need to go out and talk to other people who might buy your brand. And there are ways to do that today that are much more simple. There are platforms where you can go and talk to 100 people, and I think maybe it's $1 per person. I mean, so it's not that expensive, and you can ask them questions, or you can, it's one question at a time, or you can show them a visual of something and have them select what they like. So there's different approaches today than there were when I was starting a brand. And there's the last big piece is financial discipline. It is the reason that we're alive today. Being able to negotiate with your vendors, being able to negotiate with your app partners, all of those sort of things are important. And because we were always new, and I had been one of the leaders of buying a lot of these different apps, there are partnerships I've had for years, and it's allowed us to have a much more robust tech stack than some other brands that might be starting out today, because apps know that it's very expensive for them to fund and run an app. It's not like you just see the app and it's that you're done and there's like one person sitting behind that app. There's usually a team, and that's for everything on the iPhone store to everything in the Shopify store. So it was a little long-winded, Olivia, but I hope that was helpful.
No, that was great. That was perfect. I think a lot of people will find that helpful if they're starting out. Perfect.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I don't want to take up any more of your time, Lorrie, but it was so interesting to chat with you.
Absolutely.
And I really liked to learn all of these great strategies and things from you. So I hope the viewers will enjoy it as well.